3 spine-chilling supernatural campfire tales revealed, haunted nightmares exposed. It was a chilly evening in suburban Ohio, where laughter echoed around a crackling campfire. Karen, a hardworking single mother, sat with her son Ethan and a few trusted neighbors, roasting marshmallows. Chemically sweet laughter danced into the darkening sky, filling the air with warmth and the tantalizing promise of childhood memories. Faces glowed in the embers' light as campfire tales unfolded, weaving fantastical threads of adventure and wonder. But as the sun disappeared behind the horizon, shadows lengthened, twisting into ominous shapes that clawed at the edges of their comfort. The conversation shifted tone, unraveling into sinister territory. "Did you hear about the dog that vanished last week?" a neighbor asked, voice hushed. The group tensed. Flickering street lamps created ghostly illuminations, and Karen felt an unsettling chill. Stories of pets disappearing, whispers in the wind, and strange happenings dripped from their lips, tainting the atmosphere with a creeping dread. The stories of forest spirits and haunted shacks revealed deep-rooted fears that twisted in the hearts of her neighbors. Karen's protective instinct flared as she caught Ethan's wide-eyed fascination, trying to rein him in from the edge of terror. But the night thickened, oppressive and heavy. The warmth of the fire seemed to pack momentary comfort, soon swallowed by the looming reality of darkness. It was then that Ethan's adventurous spirit took over. Without a word, he slipped into the woods behind their home, drawn by something unseen, something ancient. Karen's voice rang through the air, "Ethan! Come back!" But it was too late. The boy, full of wonder and oblivious to the dangers lurking beneath the canopy of trees, ventured deeper into the murky shadows. As he plunged further, the trees loomed like sinister sentinels. Twisted branches whispered secrets, and leaves murmured warnings. Suddenly, he stumbled upon a hidden shrine carved from the very darkness of the woods, adorned with trinkets and tokens, remnants of a forgotten past. Horror seized him as he comprehended the grotesque ritual marked by flickering candles, remnants of an ancient spirit that demanded sacrifices wrapped in euphemistic tales whispered by locals. Back by the campfire, Karen's heart raced when she realized the absence of her son was more than just a playful mischief. Shadows danced, the fire crackling menacingly as laughter turned to panic. "Where is he?" she cried to her neighbors, faces contorted with unease. The kind smiles that reassured her now twisted into masks of something darker. Just as she stood to search, the bonfire flickered violently, sending an echoing chorus of fuel dread through the air. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Fingers trembling, Karen stepped toward the woods, heart pounding against her ribs. Each step felt weighed down by the thickening air, whispers prickling at her spine. The darkness shifted, revealing shadows where once there was light. It wasn't just the forest that was alive, something else lurked close by, malevolent eyes watching her. Desperation clawed at her throat as she called for Ethan, but the sinister nature of her neighbors was becoming clearer, their once reassuring voices now shrouded in suspicion. The overwhelming sense of paranoia enveloped her. Just when she thought she saw a flicker of Ethan in the distance, a gut-wrenching scream shattered the night, drowning her in terror. She turned, breath hitching in her throat. "Ethan?" The darkness bore down, clinging like a suffocating fog. Who was the real monster in this suburban nightmare? As she raced deeper into the murky woods, a chilling thought gripped her: they were no longer just neighbors. They were entwined in something sinister, a web of deceit that threatened everything she held dear. The truth twisted painfully, beckoning from the shadows, and she sought to pull Ethan from the clutches of a world warped by secrets and monstrous intentions. Would she succeed in escaping the horrors lurking within their once peaceful community? Karen's breath came in shallow gasps as she plunged deeper into the darkness, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. Each snap of a twig beneath her feet echoed like a cannon shot in the stillness, splintering her concentration. The air was thick with the pungent scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, mingling with her growing dread. "Where is Ethan? Ethan!" She shouted again, but her voice quavered, swallowed by the oppressive night. The haunting echoes of the scream still ricocheted in her mind, punctuating the silence that seemed to wrap around her like a shroud. Was he hurt? Every step she took seemed to pull her further away from safety and closer to whatever sinister force was at play in this wilderness. Suddenly, the trees shifted. A low rustle sent shivers down her spine, and for a heart-stopping moment, she thought she caught sight of a shadow weaving between the trunks. Ethan! Panic surged, pushing her faster. But then, another sound. A low, hollow laugh, ringing out in the night, sharp and cruel. It was an invitation and a taunt all at once. Karen froze. Was it him? Was he laughing, or was someone else toying with her? She swallowed hard, terror paralyzing her limbs. Just then, the laughter stopped. Silence loomed, heavy and thick. It felt as though the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting. Holding on to a flicker of courage, Karen resumed her frantic search, but the woods morphed around her, familiar landmarks dissolved into a maze of gnarled branches and suffocating shadows. Then, she stumbled into a clearing. Moonlight spilled from above, illuminating a grotesque sight that sent her heart plummeting. The hidden shrine Ethan had discovered beckoned with its grotesque offerings. Candles flickered like dying stars, casting eerie shadows that danced to a shuddering rhythm. And there, amongst the offerings, lay the remnants of what appeared to be fur, small, matted clumps, smeared with something darker, something viscous and wrong. A chill gripped Karen's heart. It was as if the stories they shared by the campfire were suddenly layered with a nightmarish reality. She backed away, horror rising as she turned to escape the darkness that felt alive around her. "Ethan!" She cried again, desperation fueling her resolve. But the mocking laughter now echoed again, closer, that same taunting tone wrapping around her, chilling her blood. As Karen dashed back towards where she entered, the sounds became more frantic behind her. It was not the forest closing in, it was something pursuing her, gradually closing the gap with each scream. Suddenly, a figure materialized before her, blocking her path. His face was painted with shadows, a sinister grin morphing into a taunting smirk. It was one of her neighbors, one who had whispered those terrible stories earlier. "Lost something, Karen?" Fury mixed with terror, boiling within her. "Where's Ethan?" she demanded, but her voice was feeble against his mocking presence. He pointed behind her, and when she heard it, the sound of small feet trudging through the underbrush. Was it him? Was Ethan coming back? A dizzying hope surged in her chest, but hope twisted into horror as another laugh erupted from the shadows. "Not everything that wanders in these woods returns the same." Karen's blood ran cold. "What have you done?" In a heartbeat, the truths began to unfurl: the innocent laughter, the camaraderie, the stories they had spun a web of darkness. And now, she felt ensnared. As she backed away, ready to lunge for the safety of the trees, the figure stepped forward, revealing what lay behind him. What awaited her was a form she could barely comprehend, half-shrouded in the darkness, an echo of a nightmare waving welcome. Would she plunge into the unknown to save her son, or would she be the next sacrifice feeding the ancient spirit lurking beneath the surface? Just as darkness closed around her, a chilling whisper drifted through the trees: "Come play with us forever." What would she have to do to reclaim her son from this hollow game? Karen's instincts kicked in as she stumbled backward, heart racing, breath hot against the frigid air. The figure looming before her was more than a silhouette, it exuded a presence that felt wrong, as if it had clawed its way through the fabric of reality. Shadows flickered across its face, but the hollow eyes bore into her, and she felt stripped bare, exposed to the darkness. "What have you done?" The tremor in her voice betrayed the fury swirling inside as she shifted her gaze behind him, desperate for any sign of Ethan, but he held his stance, unwavering, as if a barrier stretched far beyond what she could see. "Your boy, he wants to play. The woods are hungry, and they've chosen him." A knot twisted in her stomach. "No. Where is he?" Her fists clenched at her sides, nails biting into flesh as panic mounted like a wave ready to crash. "Lost, Karen." "Just like you," he chuckled, a twisted, cruel sound that danced through the air like a taunt. "They all get lost in here. You think stories are just stories? You think it's just a game?" Behind him, a glimmer of movement caught her eye. The shadows began to swirl, a ripple in the darkness revealing heaving shapes, indistinct but growing in size. Her breath hitched, feebly suppressing the rising tide of dread. The trees felt denser, writing in an ancient language she couldn't understand, wrapping tighter around her, suffocating. Karen's body responded on instinct as she lunged to the side, navigating the fallen branches and undergrowth like a desperate animal fleeing. She didn't know where she was going, but anywhere that led away from him was better. As she ran, her thoughts ricocheted. "Ethan! Ethan!" Each cry felt like a prayer, different yet desperate, a plea to whatever fate listened. The woods echoed her fear, twisting reality into something unbearable. Each step stole faint strength, the earth beneath damp and unforgiving. She darted past familiar bark, past memories of laughter shared, but now everything morphed into sinister reminders of power the forest held. A sudden, sickening weight fell upon her chest when a shrill giggle pierced the shadows. It wasn't the chilling laughter this time, it felt like something playful, childlike even, drifting on the wind. "Mommy, I'm here." "No." Her insides churned, a mix of relief and horror twisting together. "Ethan!" She screamed, launching herself in the sound's direction. Her feet patted against the loamy ground frantically, pulling her toward that voice, sharp as glass yet sweet as honey. Then she saw him. Just ahead, framed by the far reach of curling branches, he stood with his back turned. Relief flickered in her heart, but it was immediately shrouded by dread as he faced something unseen. His head tilted, and a twisted smile crept onto his lips. Karen's blood ran cold as she called his name again. "Please, Ethan. Come to me." But he didn't move. Instead, he turned slowly, revealing eyes that glowed unnaturally in the dim light, almost as if they were absorbing the shadows around him. "Mommy, come play with us." His voice no longer sounded like her son's. It was lighter, layered with something sinister, almost echoing those imposing whispers from the woods. The figure behind her materialized, a grin stretching across its darkened face. "It's too late, Karen. He's one of ours now." Karen staggered backward, every instinct screaming to run, but her legs felt like lead. The whisper of leaves became louder, more insistent, closing in on her, coiling around her heart. "What will you choose?" The figure crowed, as twisted laughter erupted from the trees, almost maniacal in its delight. The forest seemed alive, a sentient being delighted by the dread festering in her chest. She felt the invisible lines tightening around her, a web woven from fear and despair, choking off escape. Could she reclaim her son? Or would they both be forever lost in the dark embrace of the woods? The shadows beckoned again, whispering promises of pleasures buried in nightmares. Just as Karen's resolve faltered, she locked eyes with Ethan. Had he truly vanished, or was he merely hidden behind a mask, one that would drag them both to a fate sealed by blood? Reaching for him, the figures around her began to shift closer, and the darkness deepened, hungry for more. In that moment, Karen would have to decide: plunge into the abyss or take a final stand against the void that threatened to consume everything she loved. Karen's heart hammered in her chest. The world spun as she took a step back, caught between her instincts and the dark murmur of the woods. The air felt electric, charged with malice as the forest around her twisted in its own glee. Mommy, Ethan's voice was different now, layered with a childlike delight and hidden menace that wrapped around her throat like a noose. We can be together forever. No. The scream tore from her throat, a raw emotion she could barely contain. She couldn't let him go. Not like this. Desperation surged through her. You're not my son. The words hung in the air, mingling with the fragrant, damp earth, thickening the shadows. Ethan tilted his head, that grin never wavering, his eyes aglow in a way that twisted her stomach. But I want to play, Mommy. The laughter that followed wasn't just his, it echoed from the trees, a chorus of shrill, childlike voices mingling with something older, darker. The figure behind her stepped forward, a cloak of shadows weaving with its movements. What's the game, Karen? Will you join them, or choose to fight? Suffocating guilt swept over her. Was it true? Did Ethan truly want this horrid play? Her mind raced. In these woods, could she still reach him, or was she battling nothing more than a memory? You're just a puppet, she spat at the figure, a fleeting spark of defiance igniting within her. What do you want with us? The figure laughed again, its face twisting in the tremors of shadows. Just nourishment, dear Karen. The innocent, those you cherish. They keep the forest alive. Wouldn't you want them to thrive? A wave of sickness washed over her. The vines around her ankles tightened like aspirational nooses, and she felt the world fade to black at the edges. But in that darkness, a flicker, it was Ethan. He stepped closer, his voice seeping through the murky haze. Mommy, I can take you where it's safe. The woods throbbed around her, the whispers merging into one resonant call. Everything about this place thrived on fear, on torment. Her instincts screamed that she must refuse. But what if he was right? What if there was safety there, away from the torment? What about you, Ethan? She shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. Where are you? Fight this. His childish laughter once again mingled with shrieks of shadows swirling in nightmarish glee. The darkness shrank back, almost as if it feared her words, and for a heartbeat, the forest swayed, as if holding its breath. Join us, Mommy. We can be together. Panic gripped her. The tangled roots around her feet seemed to pulse, the very ground alive and hungry. She felt a depth of darkness from within that beckoned her to give in, to relent to whatever allure the forest presented. Fight! She whispered to herself, feeling the choking despair grip tighter. In her mind's eye, she imagined Ethan, his laughter, his warmth, but the ominous glow in his eyes sparked dread. Was her boy truly gone? Choose. The figure hissed, the shadows writhing with a life of their own, the grove throbbing with expectancy. Leaving wasn't an option. Not when his essence felt so close. Karen's fingers tingled, and she slipped a hand into her pocket, feeling the cool metal of the small knife she always kept. Game on, she murmured under her breath, ready to confront whatever twisted reality awaited. Her heart surged with resolve. But before she could act, the ground trembled. The trees around her creaked and groaned, shadows expanding as they bared their teeth, a mass of branches and despair. Join us or perish, the woods screamed, erupting into chaos. Every branch became an arm reaching out, everything alive with malicious intent. As the chaos erupted, she stood firm, determination burned within her core. Sound danced around her, but all she could hear was the soft, coaxing voice of Ethan, muddled in the frenzy. Then came the voice of another, a stranger, clear and smooth as glass. Will you fight for the ones you love, or will you let them drown in the darkness? Terror gripped her as the woods wheeled back in a burst of frantic shadows, leaving Karen pregnant with anticipation. She had to make the decision, but the whispers grew louder, insistent. Ethan! She cried, drowning in the suffocating tide of decisions. But as the sinister laughter echoed, only a single thought remained: had she already lost him? The ground beneath her shifted, and winds howled with cries of despair. As everything spiraled, she clutched the knife tighter, resolute. In that moment, she would either sever the ties that bound them or become just another ghost entwined in the curse of the forest. Could she turn the tide, or was she too late to save either of them from the dark? The shadows surged, and darkness fell around her, leaving only a haunting echo of choice. Karen felt the shadows coil around her, a living mass trying to swallow her whole. Panic pulsed beneath her skin, every heartbeat urging her to flee. But she wouldn't leave Ethan behind, no matter how twisted he had become. "Ethan!" she yelled again, voice trembling. "Fight this. Please, come back to me." But in the thickening darkness, his laughter echoed, sharp and jagged. The woods didn't just want her, they craved his innocence, too. With every scream, the shadows thickened, feeding off the despair that pulsed in the air like a living thing. The figure loomed larger, a grotesque silhouette against the writhing mass of branches and whispers. "This is your choice, Karen. Embrace the darkness, or lose him forever." She tightened her grip on the knife, feeling its cold metal slide against her palms, grounding her in the chaos. Purpose ignited within her, bright against the encroaching darkness. "I won't let you take him." Wild shadows whipped around her, claws and teeth that dripped with malice. A branch lunged, but she sidestepped, defiance surging through her veins. "No. You won't trap us here." The ground trembled beneath her feet, arguments of sorrow rising, amplifying her resolve. She refused to be a pawn in their game. In that moment, a thought sparked a notion of all the love she had for Ethan, the memories that kept him alive within her. Could they break the hold of this cursed forest? "Ethan!" she screamed, voice resonating deep within. "You have to remember me. Remember our time together." For a fleeting moment, the darkness recoiled. Shadows twisted away, and Karen caught a glimpse of Ethan's face marred by strain but flickering with a hint of recognition. His eyes, once playful, were now glazed, caught in the vice of an unspeakable terror. "Mommy," he whispered, but it was lost beneath the wails of the forest, drowning out her plea. The woods raged, branches snapping like the crushing sound of thunder, angry at her intrusion. "Fight back, love. Remember the stories I told you. The adventures. Our laughter." As she spoke, she felt the knife vibrating in her grip, almost resonating with her words. The tension grew, so thick it pressed against her skin, suffocating yet electrifying. The figure stepped closer, face now starkly illuminated. It was a visage of grief, eyes deepened with a darkness that seemed cruelly human. "Enough!" it hissed. "You will not sever our bond." But Karen had a different purpose now. There was strength in her love, raw and powerful. "I want to let you take my son." With a primal scream, she thrust the knife forward, aiming for the figure's shadowy heart. As the blade met darkness, a shockwave rippled through the woods. The forest shrieked, trees shuddering as the shadows pulled back, revealing Ethan, his face twisted and frightened, struggling against an unseen force. "Mommy!" he cried, desperation lacing his voice. "Hold on, Ethan. I'm coming." With every ounce of strength, she lunged at the figure, plunging the knife deeper, feeling resistance give way to something almost warm. The dark figure roared, a sound that shook the very roots of the forest. Light burst forth, a blinding radiance that sparked from the blade and engulfed the area. The shadows recoiled, howling in sorrow and rage, as they were torn apart by the blinding illumination, but just as quickly as it came, it faded, leaving Karen in an eerie twilight. The laughter turned to sobs, but amid the chaos, she saw Ethan, illuminated in the fading light, reaching for her with a look of pure hope. "Mommy! Please!" But as she reached for him, the woods began to shriek louder, the ground buckling beneath her once more. "No! Not again!" she shouted, fear slicing through her as roots coiled around her ankles, pulling her down. In that final moment of clarity, she understood the trade-off her life for his freedom. As the darkness whipped around her, ready to swallow her into the abyss, she felt the knife slip from her grip, clattering away. "I choose him!" she yelled, feeling the warmth of inevitable doom creeping into her bones, but with that declaration, something shifted. The shadows paused, and for a heartbeat, the forest held its breath. For a fleeting second, she felt liberation, a tug of hope bubbling up from within. Would it be enough to break the hold? Could she save Ethan? The shadows surged, and the deafening roar of the woods enveloped her, leaving only the faint whisper of choice behind. "Mommy," came Ethan's voice, distant yet close. Then everything went dark. What had she truly let go of? A chill swept through the air, biting at Karen's skin as she hovered in the void. She felt weightless, as if she was being pulled apart at the seams. Panicked, she grasped for something, anything that might anchor her. But the darkness was thick and thickening, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud, making each breath feel like a desperate gasp, and then, she heard it. A faint sob echoed through the emptiness. "Mommy." Ethan's voice. Hope surged within her like a spark igniting tinder. "Ethan." She screamed, but the sound was lost, swallowed by an abyss of shadows. Time had no meaning here, and as she floundered in obscurity, memories began to flicker around her, snippets of laughter in the park, the warmth of his tiny hand in hers, the look of awe on his face as she told him stories by the fireplace. Each memory felt like a lifeline, pulling her back toward some distant light. "Fight it, sweetheart. We've fought through worse than this. You can do it," she cried, heart pounding with desperation. But the darkness tightened, pulling her deeper. She could feel Ethan slipping further away, a flickering beacon in the growing gloom. Images surged before her, glimmers of his laughter altered by the shadows' cruel influences, an altered version of their joys now twisted into something sinister. A horrible realization clawed at her. What if the forest distorted our bond? She thought in terror. What if it twisted him beyond recognition? Suddenly, another voice emerged, deeper and resonant, a mocking tone that seemed to drip like poison. "Oh, how sweet." A mother's delusions of heroism. The figure materialized again, this time clearer, a caricature of nightmare adorned in shifting shadows. Its eyes glimmered with malice. "You think you can save him by holding on to those memories? They will be his undoing. Embrace the darkness, and you will find true power." "Never." She spat, anger surging through her. "You don't understand love. You don't know." The screams and sobs of the forest crescendoed into a deafening chorus, wrapping around her, tugging at her sanity. "I will never surrender him to you," she shouted, defiantly searching for the blade she had abandoned. As if her defiance were a locator, the shadows shifted. The knife glistened far away, half buried in roots that twisted like skeletal hands against the dirt. With a surge of determination, Karen steered her will toward it. "Ethan. I'm coming." As she surged toward the knife, a shred of hope ignited between them. "Hold on, baby. I love you," she called out, vision blurring, heart racing, but with every step forward, the forest raged back. Branches snapped like whips against her skin, pulling and scratching, urging her to give in to the despair. The ground roared with anger, and Karen stumbled, falling hard onto her knees at last. "Mommy." Ethan's cry pierced through the chaos, brittle yet vibrant. Her heart cracked open. She wouldn't yield. Crawling through the shadows, she grasped for the blade, fingertips skimming across the cool steel. "I choose love," she declared defiantly, gripping the knife tightly. The forest screamed, an unholy sound that shook the silence around them. Shadows swirled in response, wild and unforgiving. But Karen held strong, the knife glimmering in the murk, a symbol of hope. Yet, as the shadows began to recede, revealing a glimpse of Ethan's face again distorted and pleading, pain surged in Karen's heart. Would he remain lost forever to this darkness? "Mommy!" he cried, but the shadows surged, trying to reclaim him. Before she could react, the roots shot out again, binding her limbs, cold and unyielding. She struggled against them, her breath hitching, the forest tightening its grip as if to crush her will. A flash of insight pierced the storm inside her. It feeds on our fear. She realized. Could she fight it with love? With the memories they shared? As the shadows loomed closer, Karen screamed, "No! You can't take him!" Suddenly, the darkness swirled, pulling Ethan once more into its depths. "Mommy!" His voice faded, swallowed by the scream of the woods. And then, everything went silent. What sort of bargain had she struck? What power would it cost? As whispers of the forest returned, soft and mocking, only one question lingered in her mind: was she strong enough to save him, or had she already lost him for good? Karen's heart raced, adrenaline fueling her desperation as the silence enveloped her like a thick fog. Her mind spun, frantic thoughts tumbling over each other. Ethan was gone, swallowed whole by the darkness, her worst nightmare. But some part of her refused to accept this. Not yet. She clawed against the roots entangling her wrists, the cold grip of the forest tightening like a noose. "I won't lose you," she cried, louder this time, her voice steadying. With every ounce of willpower she could muster, she focused on Ethan's laughter, his warmth, the way he lit up the room. The shadows shrank back, momentarily unsure. The air thickened around her, heady with pain and longing. "What do you want?" she growled, anger boiling in her veins. With a low growl, the dark figure reappeared, sharper now, its features twisted in a ghastly grin. "Your love is delicious, but it holds no power here," it hissed, stepping closer, a formless mass of swirling night. "What you feel is nothing but a tether to your despair. Despair can't conquer love." Karen shot back, each word dripping with fierce conviction. The memory of her son's joyous giggle became her shield, a bright flame dispelling shadows inching closer. But then the forest shuddered, a visceral tremor that threw her off balance. "Mommy, please!" Ethan's voice echoed, precarious and distant. The plea ignited a surge of determination in her gut. "I will find you. I will save you." With a sudden burst of defiance, she yanked her hand free from the clutches of the roots, the knife slashing through the shadows around her like a dagger through fog. The instant the blade met the darkness, it shrieked an unholy cry that echoed through the void. The air rippled, and for the briefest moment, she glimpsed Ethan again. His eyes were wide with fear and confusion, the shadows beginning to twist his features into a nightmare. "Mommy!" His cry echoed against the silence, a haunting melody. "Hold on, sweetheart!" Karen shouted, fighting backward through the suffocating darkness. There was a furious mass of shadows behind her, pushing ever closer, filling the space with malevolence. The knife burned hot in her hand, drawing strength from her resolve. She pressed forward, the glimmering steel leading her way. Each step felt like a battle, each breath like a prize. "You don't own him!" she screamed again, driving the knife toward the core of darkness. In that moment, the forest erupted. Shadows split and crashed, roots fled from her path. She felt the pulse of fear around her, the hollering of the voices in her head growing louder, a cacophony that clawed at her sanity. "Embrace the darkness, Karen," the figure taunted, echoing her thoughts. "You can't win with mere memories. Power lies in giving in. Power lies in love." She retorted, charging forward into the churning gloom. With one final thrust, she plunged the knife forward, aiming at the pulsing dark mass before her, her son's face flickering in and out like a faulty bulb. The shadows cried out with rage, surging back, smothering everything in hatred and regret. The knife found its mark, sending a shockwave of raw energy through the air. A blinding light bloomed, illuminating the void for a split second. She squinted against the brightness, heart in her throat. As the shadows dispersed, she saw Ethan barely. "Mommy!" he screamed, reaching toward her as the light swallowed the dark figure whole. But in that moment of fleeting clarity, a new terror twisted her insides. As the figure disintegrated, its scream rippled back into the depths of the forest, leaving behind an ominous whisper. This instant over the pulse of darkness enveloped her again, heavy and suffocating. Was this forest truly alive? What had she awakened in her defiance? Everything around Karen shifted, warping and folding in on itself. Fear festered within her as she realized what waited ahead was worse than anything they had faced before. Would she find Ethan's true self or something far more sinister? And just as she steadied herself for what was coming, the ground trembled ominously beneath her feet. The ground lurched violently, throwing Karen to her knees. She gasped, hands scraping against the damp earth, the air thick with dread. Shadows pulsed like a heartbeat, swirling around her, whispering in a language she couldn't understand. Her mind raced. Where was Ethan? Had her burst of defiance only angered whatever malevolence lurked in the forest? Crawling on her hands and knees, she strained to listen for Ethan again, straining against the suffocating weight of darkened branches reaching down like skeletal fingers. Ethan! She screamed, her voice breaking, cracking under the strain. The whispers grew louder, mocking her, echoing off the trees, making her feel small and vulnerable. The roots slithered back, retreating into the earth, but the darkness continued to swirl. It felt sentient, aware of her presence. In an instant, a shape formed from the dark just out of reach. Was it the figure from before? She squinted through the shadows, trying to catch a glimpse, trying to understand the form that loomed, flickering and indistinct. Mommy, Ethan's voice echoed again, this time filled with a desperate plea that cut through the cacophony. Help me. Her heart lurched. Ethan. She cried out, her pulse racing. Where are you? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, the sound haunting and tethered to fear. The dark mass inched closer, and she brought the knife up instinctively, its surface catching what little light there was left. The shimmering steel felt reassuring, but she needed more than just a weapon. She needed a plan. Her gaze raced around the forest, looking for any signs of hope, of clarity in the chaos. Suddenly, a frigid wind swept through the trees, carrying with it an echo of laughter that chilled her to the bone. It was no joyful sound, it twisted and warped, a blend of Ethan's giggle and something darker. That laughter slid through her mind with sinister intent, thrumming against her sanity. No! She shouted to the shadows. This isn't you. I know who you are. Her voice held conviction, but the stillness in the air laughed back, a sound that felt like teeth scraping down a blackboard. The shadows seethed, pulling back momentarily as if considering her words. Karen seized her chance. She pushed herself to standing, the knife raised high. Ethan! She roared, if you can hear me, hold on. I'm coming. With a step forward, she plunged through the thick veil of darkness. As she advanced, the shadows twisted and flared, revealing glimpses of what lurked within the faces of those lost, melding together in agony and despair. Each visage whispered secrets, tales of grief that clawed at her heart, gnawing at her resolve. Yet, she pressed on, fear mingling with determination, unwilling to succumb to their despair. The trees began to tremble violently, branches snapping as a rumble echoed through the forest. The darkness thickened, pressing against her, suffocating her thoughts. Just then, something cold gripped her ankle. Karen stumbled and fell. She felt fingers withered and skeletal slithering up her leg, pulling her downward into an abyss of despair. No! She screamed, forcing herself to kick and swing wildly. The shadows recoiled, but their laughter turned to furious shrieks that cut through the night. With one last desperate lunge, she pushed the knife down harder, slashing through the fingers wrapping around her. They withdrew, leaving behind a burning sensation that spread like fire through her veins. Breathless, she staggered back to her feet, her vision swimming as she gasped for air. Ethan! She cried again, voice hoarse, desperation threading through her words. Just as she steadied herself, a shape lurked behind the trees, a flicker of movement drawing her eye. Was it Ethan, or was it something else? The laughter echoed again, now clear, ringing throughout the still air. In that moment, everything within her screamed that this battle was far from over. The whispers were rising once again, and the darkness was thickening. Who or what was waiting for her at the heart of the forest's evil? It was close now, whatever. It was. A flicker of motion beckoned her forward towards doom, or perhaps to her son. With her heart pounding and the knife gripped tightly, she took a step forward into the unknown. Karen took another step into the suffocating darkness, her heartbeat pounding in her ears like a war drum. Each breath burned in her chest, heavy with dread. The air was thick, wrapping around her like a shroud, stifling her thoughts, and snaring her desire to flee. The laughter echoed again, clinging to the back of her mind, a twisted melody that filled her with palpable terror. "Ethan!" She shouted once more, urgency lacing her voice. With every syllable, the shadows crept closer, threatening to engulf her. She tightened her grip on the knife, the cold metal offering a flicker of comfort. Ahead, the darkness bubbled and shifted, revealing glimpses of Ethan's playful silhouette, darting between the twisted trees. "Mommy!" His voice rang out, innocent yet strained, calling her name as if he were playing a cruel trick on her. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming!" She cried, a mixture of fury and fear fueling her steps. But the shadows danced, distorting his form, warping his image into something grotesque. "Help me, Mommy!" The plea drove a dagger deep into her heart, tearing at the last remnants of her hope. Following the voice, she stumbled into a clearing, and the moon broke through the clouds, illuminating the dark canopy overhead. The sight twisted her stomach. Spectral figures hung in the branches, their faces twisted in perpetual anguish, eyes hollow and empty. "What are they?" They seemed to chant, a choir of tormented souls drawn from the depths of horrors long past. Each wail resonated within her, a painful reminder of what she had to lose. She pressed forward, fear clawing at her insides, every muscle in her body screaming to retreat. Suddenly, a warm gust of wind whirled around her, erasing the whispers like they were made of mist. It carried with it a hint of something familiar, Ethan's scent, the sweet baby soap she used during his bath. Her stomach dropped as the shadows receded slightly, giving her a glimpse of a small figure crouched beneath the gnarled roots of an ancient tree. "Mommy!" The voice was faint, filled with desperation and longing. Karen's heart raced as she rushed toward the figure, battling against the darkness that wrapped around her ankles like ice. "Ethan!" Just when she reached what she thought was Ethan, the shadow lifted, morphing into a doppelganger of her son, its face twisted into a smirk that sent chills down her spine. "Mommy!" it taunted, voice dripping with mock innocence. "You shouldn't have come here," she recoiled, the reality crashing down as the darkness roared to life. Tendrils slashed at her, grazing her skin, their coldness digging into her flesh like knives. She could hardly breathe, could hardly think. Instinct propelled her back as she swung the knife wildly. "Get away from me!" she yelled, but the shadows only lurched forward, a wave of darkness hungry for her fear, her despair. In the chaos of her panic, she glimpsed a spark of light to her left, another way. A flicker of courage ignited within her. She pivoted, sprinting away from the horrific apparition. The shadows shrieked, their voices weaving together in a tempest of sound. With every frantic step, she could feel their frustration, the darkness clawing at her heels. She broke into a full sprint, the trees blurring by as she chased the light. But just as she thought salvation was near, the ground quaked violently again, swallowing the earth beneath her. She fell into a pit of pure darkness as her scream echoed, engulfed by an unseen force. Dropping the knife, she clawed at the walls of her tomb, fighting against the pull of despair. When a hand, grizzled and wet, reached for her out of the void, she screamed louder than she ever had before. And so she fell, deeper and deeper, wondering if she would ever see her son again. What awaited her at the bottom? Was it freedom or a darker fate? Karen plunged into the abyss, the darkness wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. She screamed, panic bubbling up, clawing at her insides as she fell. The air screamed past her, a furious wind that carried whispers from the depths, echoing with mockery and despair. Each heartbeat pulsed around her, loud and frantic, urging her to fight, to find her way back to Ethan. But how could she fight what was consuming her? With a jarring thud, she slammed into the bottom, the ground giving way beneath her. She lay still for a moment, disoriented, her surroundings cloaked in chilling gloom. Slowly, she pushed herself up, heart racing, fear boiling over. There had to be a way out, there had to be a way to save her son. Pushing back against the walls of despair that threatened to close in, she focused. Memories flooded in the warmth of Ethan's laughter, the feel of his small hand in hers, their adventures together. In that moment, she conjured a single, ardent prayer. "Ethan, I'm coming for you." Rising from the ground, she took a step forward, only to feel the shadows curl around her again, slick like oil. They whispered, their voices intertwining with echoes of anguish. "You're lost, Karen. He's no longer yours." "No!" She cried out defiantly, gripping the knife close as if it was a lifeline. "I will find him. I will bring him home." The shadows recoiled slightly, hesitating as she pressed on, determination igniting her spirit. She wouldn't let them take him. They would not win. With every step, she squeezed the knife tighter. The world began to shift around her, shadows melting into shapes that seemed alive creatures reflecting her deepest fears. Yet she pushed forward, weaving through, refusing to succumb. "Ethan!" she called, voice now steady with resolve, bouncing off surfaces dimly illuminated by ghostly light. "Where are you?" Suddenly, the shadows parted. In the middle of a clearing cloaked in moonlight, she saw him, Ethan. But it wasn't wholly him. The glow in his eyes flickered like a dying candle, and his face appeared pale, haunted by something she couldn't comprehend. He stood near the ancient tree, chestnut roots gnarled and twisted around him like serpents. "Mommy," he whispered, the word breaking her heart. She sprinted forward, desperate to reach him. But as she approached, the shadows surged, leaping at her, trying to pull her back. "No! Stay away from him!" Karen shouted, plunging the knife into the nearest shadow, sending them skittering back. "Ethan!" she cried, her voice raw with fear and hope. "Fight it, love. I'm here. I believe in you." His eyes flickered, a brief moment of clarity breaking through the darkness. "Mommy!" he gasped, stepping closer, but the shadows lunged again, eager to reclaim their prize. They hissed, wild and furious, wrapping tighter around him, stealing her resolve. Karen raised the knife higher, letting the luminous energy of her love surge through her entire being. "We are more than this darkness. I won't lose you." With every ounce of love, she charged at Ethan, plunging the knife into the ground at her feet. A shockwave resonated through the earth, radiating warmth and light, pushing the shadows back with a shriek. Ethan blinked, his clarity returning as he took a tentative step. The shadows shrank as if disoriented by her light, and she felt warmth swell in her chest. "Keep coming, sweetheart," she shouted, feeling the power of their bond pushing against the dark. That he hesitated at first, but then he took another step, a full-hearted leap, escaping the roots gripping him, running into the space that glimmered with hope. "Mommy!" She fell to her knees as he reached her, wrapping his small arms around her neck. She held him tight, feeling his warmth seep through her, a beacon against the encroaching darkness. But they weren't free yet. Shadows snarled, attempting to reclaim their prize, hissing in furious rage. "You can't escape. The forest demands its sacrifice." Grinding her teeth, Karen stood firm, clutching Ethan protectively against her chest. "You can have me," she yelled defiantly. "But you will not take my son." As she spoke, the knife shone brighter, illuminating the shadows. The whispers of the forest began to falter, until silence filled the air. With a great burst of energy, she thrust the knife forward, aiming toward the heart of the shadowy mass behind them. A blinding flare erupted, scattering the darkness and throwing it back into the recesses of the forest. With a final resounding shriek, the shadows dissipated, retreating into the depths from whence they came. In that moment of clarity, the woods groaned, but the light remained, wrapping around them, pulling Karen and Ethan into a vibrant warmth. As the void closed behind them, she hugged him tighter, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. And then, unexpectedly, they were free, standing at the edge of the familiar, safe backyard. The clatter of the campfire and the distant laughter of neighbors floated faintly toward them, as if waking from a nightmare into a hazy dream. "Mommy?" Ethan whispered, looking up at her, childish innocence shining through. "It's okay, sweetie," she choked out, swallowing back a tidal wave of emotion. "We're home. We're safe." Her heart swelled with gratitude. They had fought the darkness together and had emerged victorious. The sun began to rise, washing the world in golden hues, a new day dawning, a new beginning. As they stood there hand in hand, the past began to fade, the haunting echoes of the forest waning into nothingness. "I love you, Mommy," Ethan said, his voice filled with sweetness. Karen smiled widely, relief flooding her heart. "I love you too, more than you can ever know." They turned together toward their home, walking toward the future, knowing their bond could weather any storm. And in the depths of the trees, a hushed whisper echoed faintly, "This isn't the end, but for now, they had triumphed." You need to subscribe now to the channel for more thrilling stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to help the algorithm spread the word. I want to see you flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this tale. Show your support and let us keep this adventure alive.